Hi, this is Angela G. from No Longer Lukewarm for Red Hot Christians and Wannabes. These videos are for those of you who like to listen while you're maybe doing something else. For those of you who like to read my blogs, you can find that link in the description box below. So this one is called Defend Your Lentil Patches, Stand Up for Truth. One morning a while back, I woke up to these words from the Lord. Stand up for truth wherever you can. Don't just go along to get along, lest the darkness encroach even more. It's a hard message in our society in which truth is relative and tolerance reigns. We're expected to accept people's beliefs, no matter what they are, and when we don't, we have a fight on our hands. But tolerating and accepting something today just leads the enemy to expect us to support and applaud it tomorrow. Every inch of ground we give up for truth just allows the enemy to dig deeper into God's territory with his lies. This leads me to the story of Shammah, son of Ag, from 2 Samuel 23, verses 11 to 12. Shammah defends the lentil patch. Shammah was one of about 30 of David's mighty men of valor listed in 2 Samuel 23. These men not only had skill, but they also carried the blessings of God. Shammah is mentioned third. His story goes that the Philistines, the arch-rival and nemesis of the Israelites at the time, were lined up against God's people over a piece of ground full of lentils. Many fled in fear, but not Shammah. But he stationed himself in the middle of the field, defended it, and killed the Philistines. So the Lord brought about a great victory. 2 Samuel 23:12. One little patch of legumes might not have seemed like a lot to some people. After all, the Israelites grew all sorts of crops. The Philistines, on the other hand, were seafaring people who didn't do much farming, so they were used to taking what they wanted by force. But this little patch didn't just represent food for God's people. It was a blessing that God had given to them that was rightfully theirs. It was also, according to the commentaries, strategically located on the edge of Israelite territory. That one little lentil patch given up today could become a launching station for a greater Philistine attack tomorrow. Giving up the ground would allow the enemy to encroach into God's territory, and Shammah wasn't having it. Shammah alone stood up to the Philistines when others fled. He kept his ground at a personal cost to himself, but God gave him the victory. Time after time in the Bible, a small number of God's people fought against greater forces of the enemy, and time after time, God caused them to win. The odds simply don't matter when God is on your side, and God always rewards those who are faithful to him. The moral of the story for us today. The moral of the story of Shammah is that we must defend the little lentil patches in our own lives. We must stand up for truth. In the Song of Solomon 2:15, we learn that it's the little foxes that spoil the vines. Sometimes it isn't one big thing that can cause real damage, but a lot of little things. We must fight for the truth in our lives, even in little places where it might seem easier to compromise or allow the enemy to take the ground. Of course, this doesn't mean that we blast every opinion we have on every issue into the comment section of other people's posts. There are lots of issues right now being debated on social media that don't come anywhere near the God's truth category. But when we're talking about salvation, focus, godliness, love, and other areas of biblical truth, we just can't let the devil define them. We must stand up for truth rightfully given to us by God and his word. We may have a few bumps and bruises in the process, but the enemy will be stopped in his tracks, and God will reward us for being faithful.